Welcome to the deep dive. So, you asked us to really get into habits, how they work, how we can, maybe get a better handle on them.
Exactly. We wanted to go beyond the usual advice.
Yeah, and figure out how you can actually shape your habits without that constant feeling of, like, fighting yourself.
Right. And for this, we've been digging into Wendy Wood's book, Good Habits, Bad Habits. It's really interesting stuff.
It is. What really struck me is how much our environment, our context, is actually running the show, maybe more than we realize.
That's the core idea, the surprising power of context. It's often working away in the background.
So, our mission today is to pull out the practical, actionable bits from the book. Hopefully, by the end, you'll see your own habits a bit differently and have some real strategies.
Definitely. Okay, so where should we start? How do these habits even form?
Good question. What's the basic mechanism?
Well, fundamentally, a habit is a mental link. It connects a cue, something in your context, with a response and an action you take.
And there's usually a reward involved somewhere, right? That sort of cements the link.
Precisely. Repetition plus reward in a specific context. That's the recipe. Think about your morning coffee, the kitchen cue, making it the reward of the taste or the caffeine kick.
Right, it becomes automatic. And Wood really hammers home the idea that stable environments make this happen faster.
Yeah, if your home setup, your commute, your evening unwind time, if those things are consistent, the habits tied to them just lock in more easily. You don't even have to think.
Which leads to something she calls the introspection illusion. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. It's basically our tendency to think we consciously decide everything we do. We overestimate our own internal thoughts and intentions.
And underestimate how much the situation, the context, is actually driving our actions.
Exactly. We think, I chose to do that, when actually the environment just triggered an old habit.
Huh. That's quite a shift in perspective. So that biscuit I grabbed mid-afternoon,
Yeah.
maybe not such a conscious choice after all.
Could be. Could just be the 3 p.m. context, the usual spot for the biscuit tin. So what's going on in the brain when this happens?
Ah, the brain science.
Yeah.
Yeah, what did the book say about that?
Well, initially, when you're learning something, certain parts of the brain involved in goal-directed learning and control are really active. Your prefrontal cortex is working hard.
Makes sense. You're focusing, trying to get it right.
But as you repeat the action in the same context, the brain activity actually shifts. It moves to different circuits, more like the sensoromotor loop.
Sensoromotor. So more automatic, less conscious thought involved.
Exactly. It becomes more stimulus response. As Wood puts it, quite bluntly, your actions have rewired your brain.
Wow, okay. And that shift is what makes habits feel, well, effortless eventually.
That's a defining property. True habits don't require much mental energy. They just happen.
Right. Okay, let's talk about the flip side, or what we think is the flip side.
Mm-hmm.
Self-control. So many of us beat ourselves up about not having enough willpower.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge thing. Wood mentions a stat about how many Americans point to lack of willpower as the main reason they struggle with weight loss.
Yeah, I can believe that. We're sort of told, just try harder, have more discipline.
But the book really challenges that. It suggests maybe willpower isn't the main player we think it is.
So what's the alternative then, if not sheer mental force?
It's this idea of situational control. Basically, people who seem really good at sticking to goals often aren't just masters of willpower.
They're good at something else.
They're good at setting up their environment, their situation, so that it supports their goals. They make the good stuff easy and the bad stuff hard.
Ah, okay. So instead of gritting your teeth to resist the cookies, you just don't have cookies in the house in the first place.
Pretty much. That's situational control. When the good habit is built in and the environment helps you out, you don't need as much conscious effort or willpower.
The desired action becomes almost the default path. Less struggle involved.
Exactly. Which brings us back squarely to the power of context. It seems to be central to everything in the book.
We touched on it, but let's go deeper. What counts as context?
It's broad, really. It's where you are, obviously, but also who you're with, the time of day, even what you just finished doing.
And she mentions our phones too, right? As part of our context.
Definitely. Our phones are powerful cues now, so context is all those external forces shaping what we do, often without us noticing.
And that gym study example was really striking. The distance thing.
Oh, yeah, the cell phone data study. It showed people living, less than a mile and a half from the gym went way more often.
Like 5 times a month or more. compared to people maybe 5 miles away who went maybe once a month.
Something like that. A relatively small difference in distance, in proximity, had a big impact on whether an exercise habit formed.
It really shows how much we underestimate these subtle environmental factors. We think we choose to go to the gym, but maybe how close it is plays a huge, unspoken role.
It absolutely does. Which leads nicely into this concept she borrows from cooking, mise en place.
Right, the French term, everything in its place. How does that apply here?
Well, in a pro kitchen, chefs prep everything beforehand. Ingredients chopped, equipment ready. It makes the actual cooking smooth and efficient.
Reduces friction, basically.
Exactly. Wood argues that we can do the same for our habits. Set up our environment beforehand to make the desired behavior the easy path.
Like the chef-turned-teacher example she gives, laying out all the class materials the night before.
Yeah, so the morning runs smoothly. He's applied mise en place to teaching. It removes those little barriers that might make him stumble.
So for you listening, how could you apply this? What's your mise en place for, say, meditating in the morning?
Maybe it's setting out the cushion the night before or putting your headphones right next to it. Little things that make it easier to just start.
Or wanting to eat healthier. Maybe chopping veggies on Sunday for the week ahead.
Perfect example. You're preparing your environment to make the healthy choice the convenient choice later on.
Okay, this is super practical. So we know how habits form, the role of context, this mise en place idea. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Building good ones, breaking bad ones.
Right. Wood lays out 4 basic building blocks for good habits. First, stable context. Keep the cues consistent.
Makes sense.
Second, reduce friction. Make it easy, convenient. Remove obstacles.
Third, make it rewarding, especially at the start. Give your brain a reason to remember it.
Yep. And fourth, just repeat, 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 repeat until it becomes automatic. Consistency is king.
Okay, building blocks seem clear. What about the other side? Breaking the habits we don't want? That often feels harder.
It often is.
Yeah.
But the logic is basically the reverse. First, change the context if you can. Disrupt those cues.
Move the cookie jar, or
Yeah.
take a different route home to avoid the bakery.
Exactly. Second, increase friction. Make the bad habit harder to do.
Okay, like what? Give us some examples.
Well, the book mentions unplugging the TV, adds an extra step, or hiding your phone in another room if you check it too much.
Silencing notifications too, I guess. That reduces the cue.
Definitely. Even getting a simple watch so you don't pull out your phone just to check the time. Anything that makes the unwanted action less convenient.
And the third and fourth points for breaking.
Make it less rewarding, if possible. And introduce variety. Doing the unwanted thing at different times or in different ways can stop it becoming so automatic.
It disrupts the pattern.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, another concept mentioned is habit discontinuity. What's that about?
Habit discontinuity is basically when your context changes significantly. Think moving house, starting a new job, maybe even going on a long vacation.
Or even smaller things, right? Like the rainy day example affecting voting.
Exactly. Even small disruptions can knock us off our habitual autopilot. When the context changes, the old cues aren't there, or they're different.
So we're forced to actually think about what we're doing.
Precisely. We have to make conscious decisions again. And this creates a window, an opportunity to maybe change behavior patterns.
But it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It can disrupt bad habits.
But it can also disrupt your good ones if you're not careful. Like a new work schedule might mess up your gym routine.
So the key is what happens after the disruption. Using that moment of conscious thought wisely.
Yes. It's a chance to intentionally build better habits in the new context. You hear stories about people making big life changes after a major event that's often habit discontinuity, creating the opening.
Right, it shakes things up. The book also briefly connects habits to addiction. How does that link work?
Well, addiction is obviously more complex, defined as a brain disorder involving compulsive drug seeking. But Wood notes that principles like changing the environment and adding friction are really important in recovery, too.
She shared that story about the Australian addicts, didn't she?
Yes, people who managed to recover often made really radical changes. New city, new job, cutting ties with old circles, creating what's called a non-pathogenic environment.
An environment that doesn't trigger or support the addiction.
Exactly. It highlights, even in that extreme case, how powerful the surrounding context is. Changing the situation can be a critical part of changing deep-seated, harmful behaviors.
It all keeps coming back to context and consistency, doesn't it? Especially for maintaining the good habits.
Absolutely. Good habits need nurturing. Things like reducing your carbon footprint or paying off debt or building strong relationships. These aren't one-offs. They require ongoing effort.
And consistency reinforces them. Woods says variety weakens habit.
Because it messes with the stable context. If your cue for exercising, same time, same place, same workout gear laid out keeps changing, the habit doesn't solidify as strongly.
Those stable cues, location, time, people, even your phone become anchors.
They really do, and it links to what the Weight Watchers CEO observed. Sticking with the program consistently long-term was the biggest predictor of success, not short bursts of effort.
Makes sense. It's interesting, though, that we seem to notice our bad habits more. Wood mentions the Google search stats.
Yeah, more people searching for bad habits than good habits. I guess bad habits often have more immediate, noticeable downside.
Like guilt, or health problems, or just feeling annoyed with ourselves. Good habits sometimes feel less urgent, even if the long-term payoff is huge.
And bad habits can feel more intrusive, like they're getting in the way of who we want to be, so they stand out more.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. If you had to boil down the key takeaways from this deep dive into Wood's research for our listener, what would they be?
I think the biggest one is just how incredibly influential our context is. We really do underestimate it and overestimate willpower.
So shifting focus from just trying harder internally.
To actively shaping our external world. Using that mise en place idea. Prepare your environment to make the good habits easy and the bad habits hard. That's the practical leverage point.
So instead of just saying, I'll exercise more, maybe the first step is putting your running shoes right by the front door tonight.
Exactly. That's using context.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you listening right now.
Yeah, chew on this. Think about one habit, just one, that you'd like to change. Could be big, could be small. Now, what's one tiny, immediate tweak you could make to your environment, like today? Something that either makes the good habit a little easier or the bad habit a little bit harder. Just one thing. What could it be?
Something to mull over. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope exploring how habits work has given you some useful insights and maybe some practical ideas to try out.